Hello and welcome to day 3 of Beauty Tech Live. Today we have a real global overview of digital and e-commerce trends with views from Brazilian heavyweight Grupo Boticário this afternoon, a look at the e-commerce market in China, Europe and the US with the NPD Group, and a look at Asian and global digital trends from retailer A.S. Watson. But first of all, we're going to concentrate on Asia, and I am delighted to welcome Dr. Wolfgang Baier, who is Group CEO of leading Asia distribution company Luxasia. Wolfgang is an expert in digital transformation and joined Luxasia in 2016 with the mission of turning the company into a lifestyle omni-channel leader and adding e-commerce and digital capabilities to the company's brick-and-mortar foundation. Wolfgang is here to talk about one of the key issues in the market, omni-channel beauty, and how it will evolve. Wolfgang, thank you for being with us here at Beauty Tech Live. And I will leave you to present us to your vision of the future of omni-channel beauty.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here and excited to share some thoughts and answer any questions that come along. Let me start sharing. Perfect. So, excellent. So today we want to talk a little bit about the future of beauty omnichannel with a lens of Asia Pacific, but actually some really globally relevant topics. But let me first start with a few with an introduction about Luxasia, and just need to make sure that is moving. Here it is, perfect. Luxasia, like we already heard in the introduction, we're the leading omni-distribution platform in Asia Pacific. We cover 15 markets by now, over 120 luxury beauty brands. You can see here the list, most of them in the skincare, fragrance area, but also color cosmetic as well as hair care. We have one fully integrated platform, which means we import, we have our own warehouses, we man the staff in the department stores, we run the own boutiques, we run the own e-commerce shops, and we also run the CRM around it. So with over 2,000 talents, 300 online stores, and 4,500 point of sales, we basically cover the whole of Asia Pacific. I'm the group CEO, and I would like to share some of those omnichannel insights today. What is omnichannel? Very often people tell me when I talk about omnichannel, they say, it's a buzzword. What are you talking about? Or some say it's a past word, I believe it is still very, very relevant. We started talking about omnichannel more than 10 years ago. When we basically started the omnichannel transformation at Luxasia, it was something that we really focused on, and I believe it's very, very relevant today. But very often, the definition of omnichannel is also not clear. So allow me to just lead you through. What is actually omnichannel? There's the classic single channel that used to be here for many, many centuries. One shop, consumer comes in and there's an interaction. Over the last 30, 40 years, there was multi-channel coming in. So you also had e-commerce stores, you had some mobile stores, and each of them had their own channel. Over the last, I would say 10 years, cross-channel came very, very clear. So which means, what does cross-channel mean? Cross-channel means you still have the transaction in each of these different point of sales, a retail store, a mobile, or basically e-commerce store or platform, but you have a one consumer interface. It's basically aligned. So people that feel like, it's actually all aligned, it looks similar, but it's still very, very separate from each other. And this is actually where a big part of the beauty industry, but in general, most industries are at the moment. Omnichannel at the same time means a 360 view for the consumer where they can in parallel act in all of the point of sales. They can basically start shopping in online. They then look into the store, have all the data transformed, and then maybe even close it again somewhere else. So it's basically using in parallel all point of sales and having the ability to interact between them without losing the data. And this is where the future of e-commerce, where the future of beauty commerce is going to lie. So this is omnichannel, and we believe it is very relevant. Now, what does it require? We believe there are 3 important points. The first one is, as a company, as a beauty player, as a distributor, as a retailer, you need to make Omni the #1 priority for your group, setting a clear vision and a strategy. The second one is about investing into the right building blocks, and we're going to talk about them. And then embarking on a learning journey, because the omni-channel learning journey is never over. Also at Luxasia, after 5 years, we know some more, but we certainly don't know everything. It's a trial and error and kind of getting there, and really kind of, because technologies are evolving, consumer preferences are evolving, is a learning journey, and something that means learning, failing, standing up and getting along. So allow me to talk about those 3 topics a little bit more. What does it mean, setting a clear vision and a strategic plan? When we started the transformation 5 years ago at Luxasia, we made it the #1 priority for our group. We even changed our vision. We changed the group vision to be in line with omni-distribution. We changed the way we talked. We didn't talk about traditional marketing anymore. We talked about digital marketing, CRM, data. We didn't talk about just local execution. We talked about regional tech backbones. We didn't just talk about brick and mortar stores anymore. We talked about e-commerce and omnichannel, which meant we changed the whole vocabulary that we talked about it, so that every one of our 2,000 beauty enthusiasts, our beauty talents, knew we are serious. We now gonna talk about omnichannel, and everyone in the whole company needs to adapt to the new reality in the market. Now, 5 years forward, it has allowed us today to grow from a focused brick and mortar retailer to a beauty omni distribution platform. So we used to be long-term brand builder, strong network of offline trade partners, focused on best-in-class luxury retail execution and the local market execution that was driving the results. But now we're adding omni-brand, long-term brand building, strong partnerships with e-commerce, consumer-centric views about what's happening, digital frontliners. Our frontliners are now also digitally enabled, so they understand how they interact with the consumer, how they get the consumer data, how they derive recommendations on what to sell to the consumer, also with digital backbones. Social and digital marketing is now converting the omni business, and consumer data are being analyzed, recommendations are being generated as we speak, with a CRM, consumer relationship management tool, and artificial intelligence brain that allows us to gather more and more data. And the more and more data we get, the more insights we get, so that we know when and how to interact with our consumers, what products to bring in, what trends to follow. The result of the whole thing, you see it at the bottom, means we grew 2 times the market growth, so twice the market growth over the last 5 years. That is the result of omnichannel. When you really go in sync with what's happening with the consumer, brick and mortar, as well as e-commerce, and how to combine it, the results follow. Second point, very important, is once you have set the new vision very, very clearly and said, this is where I want to go. Omni is very, very important to me. Then you invest into the right building blocks. There are 4 building blocks that we see. 1 team. People is always first. The talents need to be first, because who's going to use the tech? Who's going to build the tech? I have many conversations, about omnichannel, where people say, you need to put the tech first, and tech is most important. And I'm always saying about who's going to use it, who's going to implement it, who's going to serve the consumer, who's going to make sure it's there. So we always start with the team. Secondly, 1 consumer. You need to understand the consumer view, kind of. The consumer needs to be understood across the whole company. It cannot be kind of just a distinct individual somewhere. Everyone needs to start understanding and how to interact with the different types of consumers. 1 network, brick and mortar, online, social media, you name it, everything needs to start to merge into 1 network that basically interacts with each other and feed off each other. Because especially in beauty, in your sensory industry, brick and mortar will always be important, but online is too. So how do you merge the 2? And then 1 platform, 1 backend. In the backend, there's a lot, quite often overlooked, that omnichannel is 50% backend, 50% frontend. So the platform behind also needs to work, because if this is not interlinked, it is very, very difficult to deliver omnichannel to the consumers. So let's start with the 1 team. 1 team, 3 points here: talent, diversity, and mindset. We are very proud that we are a very diverse group of people. We believe that we are stronger together. When you look at our 2,000 talents, we are an Asia-Pacific player, but we have 25 nationalities, speak more than 30 languages. We have 66% millennials and General Z, 70% women, and 60% of our senior top management are also women. So it's a very diverse group. And the way we got there over the last 5 years was really that we welcomed and integrated talents from outside the beauty industry too. We basically looked at new skill sets that typically we would not have hired in the beauty industry. But we basically said, oh, we need that. We need a different perspective. We need an out-of-the-box view. And then we role model. I talked at the beginning about it, fail fast, learn fast mindset. Omnichannel is also about failing. It is about learning, of course, but first you need to fail. Because if you don't push the boundaries to try really things out, to get the consumers integrated, to try to bring systems together, you will never push the boundaries of your thinking. And so we truly believe at the very top of the company, we start reporting about what did not go so well first, before we talk about all the beautiful things that we have achieved. So talent, diversity, and mindset. Very important to start omnichannel. Otherwise, you have the silo views and you can't break out of them. Second point, one consumer. Triple down on consumer relationships. We have a mantra. Capture, analyze, predict, repeat. Capture, analyze, predict, repeat. That's basically how we think about consumer data and consumer insights. We capture them, we analyze them, we predict them, and then make sure the consumer comes back. Because the repeat purchase is the true testament of a good CRM system. 3 key points that I would like to share here on that. Invest into CRM. Double or triple your investments into CRM. So whatever you have planned today, double or triple it, because it will pay off. It is so important. Leverage cloud technologies and software as a service for speed for implementation. There are very good companies around that already have suites ready to be plugged in. You need the people, but the technology is available. Don't build your own kind of big kingdoms and castles. Use the ones that are already proven out there. Focus data quality over data quantity. Only the right insights give you the right data, give you the right insights. Garbage in, garbage out. Data collection is an organization-wide goal. You know, we talk about in our leadership team every month about the data collection in every point of sale to understand how many have we captured, how many are verified, how many are really usable. Because you can quickly get lots of data, but you know, if they're not verified, if they're not real data, it doesn't help. And then set the right metrics, break the silos down. Very often still people talk only about ROI, return of investment. That is a good metric. It's a basic metric and an important metric when you talk about investments, especially in the beauty industry, but it clearly alone does not work anymore. You need to add in kind of purchase rate, repeat purchase, NPS scores, you know, customer acquisition cost, average basket size. You need to expand the vocabulary on and what you measure in order to really understand where your consumers are going and how your marketing and how your sales is working. Because otherwise, you know, you have a very singular view and it's not an omni view. It's not a consumer view that is out there. So invest, data quality, and set the right metrics. If you do that, things can happen. This is an example here from us. You know, we were able to map and analyze the full customer lifecycle with us. You know, we have different customer journeys, we have different triggers where people come in, and with 35,000 options, we can basically map all the consumers that we find, depending on where they are. Are they just aware of a product, have they purchased but didn't come back? Are they now in a cycle that they should actually replenish? And with that, we generate the insights to give online marketing, to give offline marketing, to brief our beauty advisors in the stores. And you know, by now we are capturing 30 to 40,000 of those insights every month. And we're able to get, for example, a very good example of how it worked was we were able to reactivate a consumer that has not purchased on any of our platforms for 1,800 days. You know, so more than kind of 5 years almost, you know, that person has not purchased. But, you know, we looked at the data, we analyzed and said, actually, this person should like something like that. And we started marketing and the person came back. So you have much more targeted marketing then when you put the right data in, when you have the right people, and when you use the right technology to start analyzing it. And don't be afraid of it. Jump into it and make it happen. The third point is about the network. I think the networks need to integrate. It's a very easy thing to say, but a very difficult thing to do, especially in the luxury beauty area where we are, because the seamless luxury consumer experience is so important. What we say is very simple. When we integrate networks, we say less stores, more focus. Focus, you know, on what you really want to change. Flagship stores, beautiful pop-ups. Choose the right e-commerce player. Mix and match the different formats together. Which platforms you're on, but focus, focus, focus. You know, just going everywhere to be there doesn't make sense. It needs to have a real integrated network strategy to say, this is where I want to be in 3 years, and therefore this is where I put the investments today. own your online points of sales. You know, the forecast is somewhere between 30 to 60% of sales will come from online pretty soon. Treat the online marketplaces as the new malls. It's very hard sometimes. You know, people say, oh, I can't own my online point of sales on a marketplace. Yeah, that's true. The marketplaces basically own the consumer data, but you can build up shopping shops. You can make sure that you combat fakes. You can make sure that you kind of add on services like virtual beauty advisors and everything else to make it, again, your point of sales, have certain consumer feedback. So there are ways around it that everywhere. Never give up. Try to find ways that everywhere you are represented as a brand, you know, you own that experience and you make sure it is surrounded by the way your brand should be represented. And then replicate luxury digitally. Because obviously, brick and mortar as an industry, we have learned very, very well to sell luxury. That's what we're here for. That's what we have been here for more than 100 years. But you know, now it's about how to replicate it. There's two things that we really now pushing very hard: supercharge sampling. Sampling is so important. Why is it important? Because it's a sensory industry. People still want to smell, try out the cream, and this is how you convert. But the traditional way of having the samples is actually not anymore how it works, because the traditional way was typically pretty expensive testers that were put up in the store. What we now need is simple ways, efficient ways that we can mail out, that we can mail to many people so that we get the smell out, that we get the texture out and all of that. So sampling is a key point in omnichannel to really get the luxury experience in there. And the other one is innovative services, you know, concierge services where people kind of can gather things together, white glove delivery if it's kind of up to your brand standard. So one can play around, you know, and there's so many solutions available already today to plug and play and really start to replicate luxury in the digital world too. I would like to share two examples on that network part. One is our own end-to-end e-commerce enablement platform. What we have built is a platform across Southeast Asia, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Australia, and India to enable brands to go e-commerce very, very easy. That means we basically have just one plug and play. If someone comes to us, you can see the brands here. We have over 70 brands, you know, our core brands from SK2 to Bulgari to Aveda and many, many more. But we also have now recently gained some traction outside of the beauty industry, you know, with Disney, Lego, Hasbro, and many, many more. So it's very, very interesting to see that the brands are looking and brand partners are looking really for simple solution to go online. What is the advantage of that end-to-end e-commerce enablement platform that we've built over the last 3 years? It's fully integrated into the inventories of the brands. It is done by local warehouses, which kind of prevents any cross-border arbitrage business because we can stop that. And it is basically, it has absolute pricing and brand control. So we have our dashboards where we basically make sure pricing is absolutely aligned with what the brand has set as a strategy. The brand proposition is absolutely aligned. But that is basically means you don't need, we have 15 of those platforms across the Asia Pacific linked to it. You don't need 15 people monitoring it. It's actually one-stop solution. And it's really helping us to grow significantly in e-commerce and add it very quickly to the other channels in the department stores, in the chain stores, as well as in the boutiques. The other example is something we are very proud of. It's our very own Essentials, you know, which was also featured by BW Confidential. Thanks for that. And recently also highlighted by Forrester. We invite you all to come to Singapore. You know, please come and try it out. You know, it's not yet the finished product in Omnichannel, but we're getting quite far already. We're integrating our events, you know, with the social media data insights. We have pop-ups that are integrated to what we learned from the core platform. We have an online shopping experience with a luxury touch where we really kind of put a lot of emphasis on the consumer journey, how people check out, how people look at that. We have our own kind of content creation there, where beauty advisors and other enthusiasts can create the content that people like. And then obviously our core retail stores that convert a lot of the business, give the people the confidence that this is really a fantastic omni-channel store for luxury and niche brands. And again, it is a long process. It's not something overnight. It's a learning process, but it works. Because since we have implemented omni-channel, the whole essential stores and the revenues in the essential stores have been growing way above beauty or overall industry growth in Singapore. And we're going to roll it out now in Southeast Asia. It's going to come to Malaysia, to Thailand, to the Philippines and Indonesia pretty soon. And this is very, very exciting. This is the power of Omni at the end of the day. If you put everything together, the consumer kind of recognizes it. The consumer says, this is some platform that I trust, and you can go after it. Last but certainly not least, and very often overlooked, is the backend. You know, the whole process optimization, the integration that needs to cover the whole organization. We call it our beauty platform, you know, where we say kind of all the insights that are coming in, the data that are flowing, you know, from CRM, from the infrastructure, you know, have to also link back to HR, have to link back to the supply chain, have to link back to our brands, and as well as the regulatory bodies. So it's a huge data flow that we have to manage in order that everything works. Because just think about it. I talked easily about setting Omni KPIs. Well, setting Omni KPIs that basically people share means you need an HR system that is flexible enough that people can share kind of KPIs and go into that. When I talk easily about saying, oh, our supply chain or our warehouses are e-commerce ready, that means the whole supply chain needs to change. You then have to basically have a B2B inventory, you have a B2C inventory, but this is just a digital kind of, I would say, diversion. It's basically both together, or division is the right word. It's basically both physically together in one of the warehouses. So it's a lot of work in the back end, but it's absolutely necessary to think through how do you want to follow the consumer? What do you want to basically do there? And how do you basically make that data architecture and the operations flow happen? We have a few fantastic people that allow us and spearhead that, and their job is really 24/7 thinking through where do we need to go next, what do we need to make sure and put that in place. So that is basically, that was the 4 building blocks that we talked about. First of all, the team, you know, the diversity and the mindset that you put in place. Then the one consumer view, putting everything together that you can really serve the consumer. The network that comes together between kind of the brick and mortar, the digital, the e-commerce, and then last but not least, the whole platform in the back end that needs to integrate from supply chain to finance, to HR, to your warehouses, to your and delivery to your brands and everything else. With that, we have set ourselves on a journey, and I think that's overall a journey that companies can rely on, because I've been working in Omni for almost 12 years, and these are some of the key, I would say, insights that I gathered over that journey. Now, the next step is a very exciting step, because it's about learning, continuing to embark on that, to really get to this absolute 360 integrated omni-channel view. And that is basically something that we're looking at. And you may look at that chart and be scared and say, oh my God, you know, what does he want to say there? So bear with me for a minute. I think what we talk about omnichannel, it means embarking on a continuous journey towards integrated technology and organization platform. What do we mean by that? What we are working towards is to say, how do we create actually an omnichannel organization that matches the technology? How do we create the people, the talents, the culture, and the mindset that matches the supply chain technology, that matches the digital technology that is out there, that matches the retail technology that is now available? Because it's very easy to talk about, you know, virtual beauty advisories or, you know, kind of about a digital supply chain and other things. But how do you get it really organized? Because, you know, one person cannot do anything. It's everyone needs to push in. In our case, the whole 2,000 people need to buy into that. And you see that, you know, some of these green boxes we already started to implement, like the full warehouse of automation. All our 11 warehouses are fully automated for e-commerce. It was a massive effort, 2 years of working. Our marketing department had to change the way basically put everything together. Our demand forecasting, the supply chain, the finance, the SAP, everything else had to change. We had to upskill people. HR had to change, you know. We are linking a lot with our authorities and partners in direct data exchange. Another one, you know, product recommendations that we're now churning out in order to, so that our beauty advisors on the floor know, hey, if this consumer comes, they are most likely to buy this one. So why don't you start sampling this? But again, if you then have this technology and none of the beauty advisors kind of uses it because they don't have any trust, it's a lot of mindset and people change all the time. So this is where we're heading. We're excited about the journey. We are humble enough to know that we don't know much, but we know basically where we want to go, and we continue to fight on and make omnichannel reality. And I hope that overview also kind of stimulated some interest in some of the partners, and happy to discuss more. I think when you look at it, we are here, kind of 15 markets. We have the largest e-commerce beauty platform by now with the consumers, easy to fill in, happy to connect and continue that conversation, obviously now also with you, Unak, and any questions that would come up. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Wolfgang. That was a very inspiring presentation of omnichannel beauty, and I think there's a lot in there, certainly in terms of data, in terms of the back end operations. I just want to start by asking you about that, because it is true, and you mentioned it, that when we talk about beauty tech or tech and tools that can be used in the beauty industry, we're sort of initially thinking about kind of gimmicks, I would say, or things that are consumer facing, but a lot of it is in the back end there, you said. Do you think the industry has grasped that? Do you think that they need to focus more on all of those back end operations? You said it's 50% of the omnichannel game in a way, in terms of getting the logistics right, etc. We are still seeing, stores that you go into a store and they don't have the stock, and you've looked online and it said they did, and those basic problems. Is the industry getting the basics right, or have they still a lot of work to do there on that back end side of things?
I think that there's still a lot of work to do on the back end side. I think I take a simple example, inventory. I think just bring the topic of inventory up to any of our beauty leaders here, and you will see, they will say, oh my God, yeah. Because, these are very, very big topics. You see a lot of the channels that basically now have all their online kind of setup. But then basically, they basically want split inventories. They say, oh, all the inventory for online is separate to the offline. What happens? The best sellers on online immediately sell out. You have no sellout. People don't like the e-commerce anymore. Move to another channel, are gone. And then people wonder why it's not working. Versus basically putting virtual inventories in place where you can tap into the whole inventory. So I think that whole topic about backend, as you rightfully said, it's easy to brush it up. Oh, I have now an e-commerce website. I have some tools. A QR code in my retail store. Yay! I think all together as a full ecosystem, and that includes also us, we need to make sure that the backend works seamlessly. And once that works, magic happens. And we see that in our Essential store. As I said, we are not there yet, but where we're able to invest and able to experiment, it is really beautiful how you see things working out. But for at least 18 to 24 months, it was working under the hood. The car looked the same. And everyone was saying, what are you doing? So it needs a certain amount of patience, but it's absolutely the right focus here. You're right. Okay.
And you said there about the split of the market. You see online coming to represent between 30 and 60% of sales there. That's a big jump. Obviously, it depends what market you're in, because I know China is very well advanced in terms of online sales. But for other markets, it's a big jump. When do you see that happening? And how do you see the digital landscape there, that online landscape? Will it be mostly those marketplaces? What type of online players will dominate the market there as well?
I think that's a very good point. I think, first of all, the range depends very much where you are at in as a geography, but also which kind of subsegment of our industry. So, fast moving color cosmetic can quickly go up to 60, 70%, versus, the high end luxury skincare is more in the 25 to 30%. We believe that these shifts will happen over the next 3-4 years. I mean, we really see kind of everywhere, because our e-commerce has grown 700% during the pandemic since the start, 7 times. So I think you can see that these are very big steps to catch up. Our industry is a sensory industry. There will always be brick and mortar involved, in some sort of form. So it basically needs to go together. If you think about it, which of the platforms will be there? I think marketplaces will play a very, very important role, because marketplaces by now are just too big to ignore. Marketplaces are the malls, the department stores that used to be there, kind of where we basically went in as children and saw all the different brands. This is where people now go on a daily basis to do their shopping. So you can't ignore them. They will have a very, very big part, and most likely the biggest part in that. But then obviously brands rightfully starting to develop their own e-commerce sites, which enables a lot of the brand building. I always call them more an educational site, brand building site, because typically the volumes are not high in terms of transactions, because it costs a lot to compete with marketplaces on the keywords and everything else. But it is important that people also know I can go to an online.com and I have the full brand experience. I understand what the brand stands for. So we do encourage those .coms, absolutely. And then there are the specialty players, some of the channels that are also coming in with .com and investing a lot. And I think those 3 are the core elements. The one that is coming now more and more is social commerce. as Facebook, Instagram, WeChat, Line, and so we have so many in Asia that are competing, opening up the buy button, I think it's going to be a revolution. Because you cannot only just now do the brand building, you can now basically sell and you can measure it. So I think there will be a lot of investments flowing in there.
And can you see that being continuing to be quite fragmented, that social commerce landscape there as well?
I think that will be pretty fragmented for quite a while in the medium term. Yeah, absolutely, because it's driven by social influencers, by smaller kind of cross-platform enablement. So I think this will take time until there's really kind of something established. But we see the future clearly that is the fourth pillar of the digital omnichannel experience.
That leads me to my next question. With the emergence of more of these forms of e-commerce, does that mean it's going to be a lot more difficult, a lot more expensive for brands to manage their business across a growing multitude of platforms? And I mean, how can brands manage the volatility there? Because obviously, an influencer could talk about a product one day and the demands can be unbelievable. And how do you manage that? Making sure that you have the product in stock, and the following week the product that's being talked about can be something completely different. It seems to be quite difficult to manage. What would be your advice there?
Absolutely. First of all, it's much more expensive and it's much more difficult. But at the same time, there's no choice, because this is the new market reality. And basically, when we look especially at demand forecasting and inventory, you hit it on the point here. This is the key, because as you said, we have sometimes, that we sell 10,000 bottles with an influencer overnight, and if you don't forecast it well, everything breaks down and it's a disaster. But at the same time, sometimes it doesn't work and you have all these bottles available. So I think what we basically look into is, number one is get the right talent. The talent in terms of demand forecasting, the talent that understands omni-marketing, the talent that understands it are very, very valuable. These are very important resources, that live typically in the shadow of beauty companies. I think those guys will become more and more important because, our industry is touch and feel, but analytics. And so I think they need to be able to combine both. There's a gut feeling, oh, this product could work, but then they need to back it up with data. And then you have success. But at the same time, there will always be misses, and that was the point I made at the beginning. At the very top, you need to allow people to make misses, because otherwise they will never go into that, because a social media campaign could be a disaster and an inventory. So therefore, they need to put the right stops in, but they need to know that the board, the management board, and the CEO has their back and says, okay, you did the right thing. Let's learn from it. Let's not do it again.
Okay, a big mindset change there, just in terms of that. Obviously, there, the risk-taking culture there that's required today for digital business, and also in terms of what you mentioned at the beginning, people, the digital transformation, breaking down those silos. It's a big undertaking at companies. Would you have any comments there on how they can better do that digital transformation in terms of their own people, for example?
Yes, so I think I repeat myself, but I repeat myself because it is so important. You have to start from the top, If you basically, as a board of directors, as a management board, as a CEO, say, oh, digital transformation is led by that person in that corner office over there, it will never work. Because, that there's too much kind of dynamics in a company that it will not interact. So you need to lead from the top and need to make sure you communicate every single day that digital and omnichannel is the new norm. And there won't be a turn back. This is the way forward. Then when you go into that, we basically started that kind of whole exercise, looked at all our talents and said kind of which are the digital skills that those talents will need to acquire over time. And then we mapped it against the existing talents and basically we started training them up. And we basically kind of gave time to the existing talents to say, oh, give 6, 12, 18 months to get there, get those courses, we can train you up. Training on the job is very important, and then see whether people get there. If after a while people don't get there, you can't endanger the whole transformation. You then need to make some shifts. So what we did first, obviously we shifted people between the departments, and then at the end you bring in new talents to really accelerate it.
Okay. You put a strong focus on data and on CRM, obviously. To what extent really is that data informing your strategies in terms of forecasting, predicting consumer behavior, marketing strategies, etc.? And we're hearing a lot about how important data is, obviously. But as you said, you have to use the data because there are companies that have reams and reams of data, but it's not really exploited that well. How can companies better exploit the data that they have to really inform their strategies?
I think it needs to be a data-driven conversation every time decisions are being made. You know, we talked about it, the beauty industry, there's always a gut feeling, you know, because which products can work, which products cannot work, but they need to be validated by data. And then basically both sides need to learn from each other. There's this very experienced marketing person and there's the data scientist, you know, they will have different views. Over time, you want to merge that together, that basically they're not two people anymore, but you have kind of someone that understands the beauty marketing and has the data perspective in their mind. You know, and I think that's always kind of when we, for example, present and we discuss anything, we say, kind of, what does the data say? And sometimes, you know, we may go against it because, you know, the person says, I know the market, I understand it, this will still work. And we say, okay, fine, you know, we trust you here. Or sometimes we say, you know, sorry, but, you know, this data is too strong to believe in, you know, and the risk is too high. We will basically go with the data here. So it's really an iterative learning process, but data need to be part of the conversation. And I'm not saying they are the ultimate decision maker, but you always want to check them and asking people at every point of sale, even at the point of sale, you know, for example, if you go to a beauty advisor, you say, how many people were there today? You know, how much did they buy on average? You know, people start saying, oh, you know, these are questions that the people are asking, so that basically people become much more analytical, because that at the end is the backbone to survive in the future.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Wolfgang. Those were really interesting insights on the future of omnichannel beauty, which is obviously the key today and one of the most important issues in the market. Thank you very much for being with us here today. And we will be back at 11 to talk with Melina Guy, CEO of A.S. Watson Asia and Europe and Chief Operating Officer of A.S. Watson Group. We'll see you later.
Thank you.